Autism is on the rise. As you can see, in 1995, the incidence of autism was 1 out of 1,000 kids. In 2016, it rises to 1 out of 54 children. And this is a study from 2018 in the US. The overall ASD, meaning autism, prevalence was 23 per 1,000 children, 1 in 44 children. What's going on? They tell us it's genetic. But do genes really change in just 25 years? You may have heard that there could be a connection between the bacteria in the guts of our children and neurological problems such as autism. Is there a connection between gut bacteria and autism? Today we're going to discuss exactly that. Let's begin. Welcome to the Wellness Messiah podcast. I'm your host, Rimon. You're a loving parent, a responsible parent, and you want to do the best for your children. And the best gift for our children is a fully developed, healthy body and brain. The brains of our children will affect their future, learning abilities or disabilities, IQ, and EQ, emotional intelligence. All of these are going to be affected by the brains of our children. And the first 5 years are the most crucial time. As you can see, by the time our children become 5, 90% of their brain volume is developed. So these 5 years, together with the time in the womb, are the most critical time in the development of the brain of our children. Brain development and gut microbiome. What is the gut microbiome? It is the collective microorganisms in the digestive system, specifically in our child's, but also ours as well. 100 trillion of them, mostly bacteria, are sitting on the walls of the gut. They weigh 3 pounds. Heavy. If you're losing weight after taking antibiotics, now you know what you have lost. And we carry those microorganisms everywhere we go. We just like a large containers of microorganisms and bacteria. Challenge 1, antibiotics. Antibiotics can save the baby's life when threatened by harmful bacteria. However, these antibiotics, they do come with a cost because they are non-specific, which means they kill the good microbiome together with the bad bugs we're targeting. This is really important. We don't have technology to target only the bad bugs, so we also kill the good bacteria, the microbiome. And most importantly, these antibiotics could affect the microbiome of babies. This is a study in 2021 from New York University. This is what they found. Antibiotics near pregnancy had a negative impact on critical neurological development in babies, in mice. Now, near pregnancy means before the mother becomes pregnant, or when you give antibiotics for a child after they are born as babies. And the brains of the babies didn't develop to the maximum potential in those instances. This is a study I'm quoting. There are also substantial effects on frontal cortex and amygdala gene expression by bioinformatic interrogation affecting multiple pathways underlying neurodevelopment, which means that both emotional development and cognitive development got hurt in those babies. So both IQ and EQ got hurt in this instance. The negative impact of our babies' brains took place too when antibiotics were given to mothers before pregnancy. As I said, it's not just when you give it to the baby, because the mother, they bequeath their good bacteria, their microbiome to the child when it's born. So this antibiotics effect also relevant for the mothers who plan to have a baby. The baby inherits a damaged microbiome from the mother at birth if the mother took too many antibiotics. That seems very confusing to me at first. Why would the microbiome, a bunch of bacteria, yeast, and other microorganisms, would affect the brain development of human babies? Professor Martin Blazer had been researching gut microbiome for 50 years. He explained this connection. I'm quoting him. First, the microbiome produces molecules important in metabolism, which is also brain metabolism. In other words, the metabolic molecules those microbiomes produces also get to the brain, and the brain uses them to grow and develop. Second, the microbiome transfers the gut chemical and physical messages. This causes the gut to produce molecules of different neurotransmitters that transmit messages in our nervous system. And there is a direct nerve, the vagus nerve, between the gut and the brain. So we have to remember that there is a direct road directly communicating between the gut and the brain. And the gut has a major impact on the communication that goes in the brain. And this communication is really relevant in the brain development, because remember, all development, all growth begins with communication in the body. And now you can see there is a connection, the growth of the brain coming from the gut. And we know who sits in the gut, which is the microbiome. And 80% of serotonin, this is a quote from him, 80% of serotonin comes from the gut. And studies have shown that the gut produces or does not produce serotonin according to the messages they received from the gut. So again, think about this. 80% of serotonin comes from the gut. This is a tremendous amount for a chemical that has such a major impact on the brain. But not only it makes us feel good, it also has to do with the brain growth. Let me show you in a second. So what do we know about serotonin and brain development? This study showed that, I'm quoting, serotonin acts as a growth factor during embryogenesis. So serotonin in essence helps the brain to grow. Thus, serotonin plays a huge role in the baby's brain development. And 80% of it coming from the gut, where its production influenced by the microbiome. This microbiome also makes vitamins the baby needs. These bacteria, they're virtually producing your baby, they give your baby daily multivitamin that helps the brain to grow. Protecting your baby together, the gut and the microbiome. The gut is the protective fence of the baby's body. The gut protects the baby from the myriad of toxins in our environment. Now, we already know that we are bombarded with toxins all the time, but the gut protects us. The baby needs the gut to protect itself also from those toxins. Which toxins are we talking about? Pesticides, heavy metals, chemicals. Pesticides in our agriculture, they work on the nervous system of insects, and we want them to stay out of the body when we eat the food. Imagine what happens when they enter the body. They target our nervous system as well. So we want to keep them away from our bodies and also the bodies of our children. And we don't want them to go to the brains of the baby, for example. And heavy metals are also potential brain toxins, only if they pass the gut, only if they pass the gut. And our gut is fed by the microbiome. When the gut is not fed, the baby's defense becomes weaker. Many of these toxins can leak inside the baby's body and get inside the brain. The microbiome also protects our babies directly. The good bacteria also make sure that aggressive bugs are kept out, aggressive bacteria, yeast, and they directly eliminate toxins that could damage our baby's brain. Dr. Campbell McBride, who specialized in neurological disorders in babies and children and worked for a long time with autistic children, I'm quoting her. These good microbes have an ability to neutralize these chemicals. In fact, they are the best neutralizer and detoxifying substances on the planet known to us. Idea: let's give our babies probiotics. It's not that simple. Here is why. Musical chairs. Musical chairs. Do you know this game when we played as children? When you have empty chairs and the music played out, and when the music stops, all the kids need to take a chair, and the kid who did not take a chair was left out and couldn't sit and was out of the game. And the same game happens in the gut. Every bacteria or microorganism takes a chair inside of our gut. It sits there on the walls of the gut on this long tube and share our food as it sits there. Once a microorganism, good or bad, takes its place, it's not easy to remove it, especially if we continue to feed it. Would you give up your chair easily if you had free food? We would have to kill you first. The same with bacteria. Nature knows this very well, which is why the babies receive the mother's microbiome at birth, right before the first sip of milk. Nature wants to make sure the microbiome takes its place in the musical chairs game before every potential contamination that could enter the baby's body. Which is why the antibiotics don't harm our children directly. However, by killing the good microbiome, either of the mother or the baby, the musical chairs themselves are now up for grabs. This is why the antibiotics don't harm our children directly. However, by killing the good microbiome, Their musical chairs of the good microbiome are now up for grabs. And there is a specific type of microorganism that is very happy with antibiotics. Can you guess who it is? The yeast, whom the antibiotics don't harm at all, giving them empty chairs to take. In fact, the first antibiotic, penicillin, which is a derivative we're still using today in antibiotics, was developed by the family of the yeast, the fungi, which explains why the antibiotics doesn't affect them. Nobody wants to hurt their family. And what do the yeast do and make in our gut? They make alcohol out of sugar or carbs. That's how we make beer and wine. We give the yeast carbs, for example, to produce beer, and sugar when we produce wine. This alcohol production happens in our gut too. Then you hear about syndromes like this one, drunk without drinking, a case of autobrewery syndrome. Yeast producing alcohol inside of our bodies from grains and sugar. And some people who probably have leaky gut of some sort, they get the alcohol entering their blood and they get drunk without drinking a single glass of alcohol. Imagine that. Alcohol doesn't help the baby's brain. It prevents the good bacteria from recovering after antibiotics. And we know that because we use too alcohol to kill or slow down the growth of bacteria. In addition, alcohol is a neurotoxin. It hurts the brain development of the baby, which is why we don't want to drink alcohol during pregnancy. Now, without the good microbiome suppressed by the yeast, other bad germs can join the party. And they love sugar too. Let's talk about mind control. Have you found it difficult to control the diet of your child? What about your diet? These bad germs and yeast sitting in the gut make our children crave sweets, bread, and grains, which the yeast and the germs, really love to eat. They sit on the chair waiting to be served. This is a study that shows that, I'm quoting, early life influence can prime the infant gut microbiome and brain for food addiction, which might be further reinforced by increased antibiotic usage and dietary patterns throughout adulthood. So they sit on the gut and they control the addictions of our children. So if you wonder why your child is attracted to food that are not healthy for them, not nourishing for them, now you know why. So after taking antibiotics, our children's diet, and the mother's diet as well, exacerbate this cycle and make sure the microbiome won't be able to recover from the antibiotics. This is what happens. Antibiotics kill the good bacteria but not the yeast, and they also open the door for the musical chairs for other bad bacteria. Yeasts take their seat in the musical chairs and produce alcohol that prevents good bacteria from growing. From there, our children crave sugar and grains without the nourishment of soluble fiber. I'm going to cover this in a moment. The gut is malnourished, the brain lacks growth signal from the good bacteria in the gut, and the toxin protection of the baby is gone. The baby's brain development is hurt in the crucial years. Lower IQ, lower EQ, learning disorders, attention deficits, and also autism. Simple steps and solution for a healthy microbiome.